Hello, folks. Robert C. here, and today I'm going to talk about one of the miracles Jesus did, and that is the miracle, what I call the miracle of Lazarus. Um, Now, I'm going to go ahead and read John 11, verse 1, to show to you who Lazarus was and what the miracle was and how it could apply to our lives today. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus. They sent word to Jesus saying, Lord, the one you love is sick. When he heard this, Jesus said, the sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Yet when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was. He stayed where he was 2 more days. Then he said to his disciples 2 days later, let us go back to Judea. But Rabbi, they said, a short while ago the Jews tried to stone you, and yet you are going back there? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours of the daylight? A man who walks by day will not stumble, for he sees by the world's light. It is when he walks by night that he stumbles, for he has no light. After he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. But his disciples replied, Lord, if he sleeps, he will get better. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but the disciples thought he meant natural sleep. So then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him. Then Thomas, called Didymus, said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go, that we may die with them. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been there, my brother would have not died. But I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she told him. I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who was to come to the world. And after she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and is asking for you. When Mary heard of this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet entered the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews had been with Mary in the house, comforting her, notice how quickly she got up and went out. They followed her, supposing she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached the place where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would have not died. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her were weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have they laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved them? But some of them said, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Jesus, once more deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was a cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, Jesus said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is bad odor, for he has been there 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me. But I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet wrapped in and strips of linen, and a cloth around his legs. Jesus said to them, "Take off the grave clothes and let him go." Now, I know this was a little long, but this is a very, very powerful part of the Bible. The reason for that is because it teaches several things. The first thing is that God does things on his own time. When the sisters called on to Jesus to help Lazarus, he stayed 2 more days. And the reason why God does things at his own time, because everything has a purpose. The purpose of Lazarus dying was so that others can believe. A lot of times things happen to us and we weep and we say, "Why, God, why? I pray to you and your prayers don't get answered." Well, you know what? They're not going to get answered on our time. They're going to get answered at God's time. I know that's not a very popular thing to say, but that's the way it is. Everything has a purpose for God, and we are not. A lot of times we don't understand what the purpose is. The second lesson that we learn on this one is that he says to Mary, the friend, I believe it was Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he dies, shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die." Now, this has multiple meanings. The first one is, whoever lives and believes in me, whoever lives and believes in me will never die. What he means by that, let's backtrack here. I'm getting ahead of myself here. He says, "I am the resurrection and the life." In fact, let me go ahead and read the verse again here. Okay. Alright, I'm sorry for that. And Lazarus dead. "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die." Let's go and read and go over the first one. "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live, even though he dies." Now, this has multiple meanings. Number one, of course, here's talking about the salvation, that once you believe in him, although you die, you will live. But I believe that it also means that when you're going through problems, even though you're dying, with him in your heart, you will continue to live and have strength to carry those problems. Okay? And then he goes on to say, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Again, talking about the resurrection. Whoever lives and believes in him will never die. Although we will ultimately face our death, we will remain living through Christ for eternity. That's the second thing that he taught us in this verse here. Now, another thing that I find interesting is that when they were weeping and the Jews were weeping, Jesus cried also, meaning that he is also compassionate. That means that when we pray to him with our problems, this shows us that he has compassion for us. Although everything's done at his time, he will weep with us and be there with us and cry with us. The last thing is the actual resurrection of Lazarus, which was to prove that he has the power to raise the dead. And this teaches us that he has a power to raise the dead in our lives, whether it's your dead spirit, your depression, raise it again. He has the power to do anything. Now, for us, there are limitations and things. Not everything is possible, but through God, anything is possible, including raising a man who had died 4 days to complete life again. That is today's lesson, and I know it was a little long. But again, email me if you need any prayer requests or any comments or any rebuttals to this, or you feel that I missed something. Again, that's it for today, and God bless you. Have a good night.